Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Justina and here I like to make, create, and inspire fun art things with you through my DIYs, and boy do I have a video for you today. It is finally that time to make some Summerween DIYs that are absolutely adorable and perfect for the summer season. I have seen a lot of people start their shopping spree right now in the middle of June at various stores with a bunch of Halloween supplies already out, and that just gave me some inspiration to make a few DIYs for my home. Now if you are new here and you haven't yet subscribed, I hope you do that today. All you have to do is click on that big red subscribe button down below. It is totally free. Don't forget to click on the bell notification so YouTube can always notify you every time I upload a new video. If you're already a subscriber, thank you so much for being here. I really do appreciate each and every one of you. Don't forget to do all the YouTubey things down below though, which is like, comment, and share it to at least one friend. It really does help out my channel. Now with all that being said, let's just jump right into it and let's art today. Jumping into our first DIY, I had such a big inspiration watching a couple videos of people shopping around various stores and seeing all of the decorations. So I started sketching in my sketchbook. This is a rough sketch of the things that I actually want to make a painting of, and then I made another sketch to see how I was going to lay everything out. Now my final project does not look like that, but it comes close, and as you see here, I did have to frame it out on this 12 by 12 canvas, so it gives me a general idea of how I want my picture to lay in the center of my canvas. Now I normally don't show you all of this. I usually like to sketch off camera, and that is because I change my mind so many times. Sometimes I just don't get the sizes right, which happened a lot in this sketch on this canvas. But nonetheless, I just wanted to show you some of my process. I do sketch it on with a pencil and I change it up so many times, and then once I have a general idea of where everything is going to go and how it's going to look and I feel comfortable with it, then I start going in and I will start painting. So I wanted to make a painting about all treats that you can eat during the summer but give it a little bit of a Halloween twist. So that is what I'm doing here. I'm turning my watermelon into a jack-o'-lantern, and I'm making creepy ice creams and so on and so forth. So after I had my sketch where I liked it, and it took a while, it started to look like this. Now, once again, it did take me a while and it is not perfect. However, once I had it where I liked it, then I am going in with my paint. And yes, I paint right over my sketch mark lines. That is because it doesn't really bother me. After a couple of coats of paint, you don't even see any of that pencil marking. Now I'm going in first with a red acrylic paint, and with this painting I'm just using my apple barrel paints that I received for Christmas, and that is because it has a bunch of different colors and it was the first thing I grabbed. Now you can use any type of paint that you want to use, but this is just comfortable and it's really affordable. You can find this paint pretty much anywhere, but you can really find it at Walmart, and it comes in different types of sizes of packs. Now the first thing I'm doing here is I'm just blocking in all of my shapes. This is just a first basic coat where I like to put down a base layer of color just to get a general idea of where everything is laid down. So I do go in back and forth motions filling in everything, and then I just give it a light first coat. I could still see the pencil mark underneath the paint, and that is okay because I do go in with a bunch of layers to really get the desired look that I'm going for. Another idea, if you are not comfortable with painting or drawing or anything artsy, that is fine. You can always find a similar picture online, or you can collect a bunch of different pictures and lay it down probably on a Word doc and print it out yourself and find find a canvas from Dollar Tree. You can cut it out after printing and then Mod Podge it onto your canvas, and it will still look pretty cool also, because you can just find all different types of images that you like and then place them anywhere that you think would look best. So once again, I'm just going to continue filling up all of my shaped areas. Now, I'm not going to show you every single process of painting this picture, because after I got in all of my layout where I like it, I just took this to the side and started painting on my own. It was very therapeutic, and plus sometimes this does take a long process, so I just like to do it off camera. Now, I am going to, like I mentioned before, add a bunch of different layers on top to really get the depth and look that I'm going for. But after a couple hours, I was finally okay with how it turned out, and that completes our first DIY. Here is how my painting turned out, and I absolutely think it is adorable. Now, it is a little bit different than my sketch, and I can't decide if I like my sketch better or my painting better. However, I really want to turn this into a sticker or even a t-shirt. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Moving right into our next DIY, I got this inspiration from the painting that I just finished making. Now, I wanted to make that ice cream sandwich out of styrofoam, so I found a couple of pieces in my crafting stash, and as you see here, I am just tracing out a coffin shape using my pencil. Now, if you do not have styrofoam in your house, you can always use some cardboard or even some poster board from Dollar Tree. Maybe stack them a couple of layers high and then cut it down to size. But as you see here, after I have my sketch out, I am going to cut it out, and I'm using my wood burning tool. Now, this one does tend to take a really long time to heat up, but it does get really hot. Once again, if you're going to do this exactly how I am, make sure you take all the safety precautions needed. You need to have a well ventilated area, maybe next to a window with your fan on, and try not to breathe in those fumes. And once again, this thing gets piping hot, so please take caution. Now, as you see here, I'm just following the sketch that I drew on the styrofoam, and I'm removing bigger pieces just so that it is easier to cut out. Then I'm trying to make these lines as smooth as possible. Now, for this piece of styrofoam, this is actually going to be the ice cream layer inside of the sandwich, so it is going to be my thickest piece. Now, as you see here, I'm trying to round out the edges using my wood burning tool, and I'm just rubbing it up against the sharp edges just to make it more rounded. After I have it to where I like it, I am going to find thinner pieces of styrofoam in my crafting stash, and I'm just going to place my ice cream portion on top of it, trace it out again. This time I'm using a Sharpie marker and just going around the edges. Now, I do need two pieces for the front and the back of the ice cream sandwich, so I do trace it out twice. Now, you don't have to be perfect because it is a Halloween inspiration for Summerween DIY, so the creepier the better. Then I'm going back in with my wood burning tool, and I'm removing any excess styrofoam that I do not need. I like to cut it down into smaller portions just so it is easier to handle. Once again, I'm going to use my wood burning tool to cut that shape out. Now, in hindsight, looking back, you actually want to cut it a little bit bigger than the lines that you drew in, just so that the sandwich portion of your ice cream sandwich is a little bit bigger. After I have them cut out, it is now time to paint them, and I'm going in with various colors of brown. I have nutmeg brown, light tan, and chocolate sprinkle brown, which is a really dark brown. But I start off with the lightest brown, which is the tan, and I place it right on top of the styrofoam, and I'm just using a paintbrush to spread it out. This will take a couple of coats to get really good coverage, and since styrofoam has all of those little holes, sometimes you have to put a lot of paint so you can cover it completely. Next, I am adding the nutmeg brown right on top, and I'm adding it towards the edges just to give the ice cream sandwich more dimension. Then lastly, I am using the darkest brown, which is that chocolate sprinkle, and I'm adding it to the edges of the ice cream sandwich portion. Now, I did paint the entire styrofoam piece, but that is not necessary because I do end up gluing all of the pieces together. Once that was done, it is now time to paint the ice cream portion of the sandwich, and I wanted mine to mimic a Napoleon. So I'm first going in with this really bubblegum bright pink color, and I'm adding it to the bottom portion of our ice cream. And once again, it does take a couple of coats to really get good coverage, but I'm trying to push all of that paint into all of those crevices. Once I have my pink portion done, I then go on to the chocolate portion, and I go in with a tan and also a nutmeg brown just to make the chocolate portion of the ice cream sandwich a little bit different than the two cookie part of the ice cream sandwich, if that makes sense. So I'm just mixing the colors together on top of the styrofoam, and once again I'm just taking my paintbrush and pushing it into all of the crevices, and then placing that to the side to completely dry so that we can put it all together. Now, when I was ready to start gluing the pieces together, I noticed that the back portion was still kind of wet, but I was impatient and I just decided to glue it together anyways. So I'm just adding a little bit of hot glue to the center portion of the first cookie. I'm going to lay down my ice cream portion of that right on top of it and push down so that it has time to adhere together. I do have my glue gun on a low temperature setting so that it doesn't burn a big hole into the styrofoam, and I continue adding the next layer of hot glue right on top, and then add the final piece on top of that. Push down once again so that it adheres together, and making sure everything was even and straight. Last thing I needed to do for my ice cream sandwich is to pretty much label it. I put RIP for rest in peace, and then for the ice cream cookie sandwiches, they normally have these little divots inside of the cookie, and I'm just using my darkest brown color, which is the chocolate sprinkles, and I'm adding it right on top using a paintbrush. I just dipped it in and tried my best to make the letters as even as possible, and then I just made a bunch of different circles. But once I was done with that, that completes our DIY. Here is how our ice cream sandwich turned out, and I absolutely love it. Now, there is some areas which you can still see the styrofoam. I really don't mind it, but if you do, you can always cover it with more paint. I also want to try to make more in the future. If that is something that you would like to see, leave me a comment down below to let me know. But I absolutely adore it, and I think it's perfect for Summerween. Moving right into our next DIY, I have this old poster board that I just use as scrap paper really to paint on, and I want to turn it into a ice cream cone. Once again, this next DIY is inspired by the painting that we created in our first DIY today, and I am going to make that melted ice cream that I painted on. So I took this poster board, started rolling it onto itself to make a cone shape. I realized I didn't need that much paper, so I took a pair of scissors and I started cutting it to the area that I thought would be enough, which is half of that poster board. Now, you can always buy poster board from Dollar Tree. I believe at my Dollar Tree it's still only $1 for a poster board, so that is still reasonably priced. You can also do this with cardboard, which is a little bit harder, but you can still get that shape out of it. However, I'm just using what I have on hand. After I rolled it back up into a cone shape, I'm just hot gluing the very end of it just to hold it in place so that it doesn't unravel. I am going to add some masking tape on the end of it too, just so that it's just added security. You can also take that masking tape and tape the whole entire thing so that it is more even coated, but I just left it on the tip of it. Next, I am using this pumpkin that is from Dollar Tree. They sell these pumpkins every single year in different sizes and now in different colors. I just found one in my crafting stash that I painted a while back, and I'm just going to repurpose it for this DIY. That is going to be the ice cream portion of this ice cream cone, and I'm just cutting down my cone to see how tall I really want it. I didn't want it too tall because it looked funny, so I'm trying to get it to the right size, and to do so I'm just cutting down the end until I get the desired look that I am going for. After I have the cone sized correctly, I am once again just using my hot glue gun, and it is still on the low setting so it doesn't burn a hole into that styrofoam pumpkin. Now I wanted my pumpkin to face a certain way, and I wanted my cone to be slanted, so I'm just adding it right into that hot glue and making sure I have the placement where I like it. Now, to make it more seamless and look more like a melted ice cream cone, I'm using some of this pool noodle that I had on hand, and I cut it down to size, and I'm just wrapping the end of the cone with it. Now this does take a while because even with the low temperature glue gun, it still wanted to melt that pool noodle, but it did hold its place after everything was solidified. Now this ice cream cone is going to be a little bit different than the painting that we have created, but it still turned out really cute. I wanted it to have like a little puddle of melted ice cream around it, and once again I'm just using some scrapped over styrofoam to do so. I'm using a Sharpie marker and making these little squiggly lines just to give me an idea of where to cut. Next, I'm going in once again with my wood burning tool, and I'm just cutting out the lines that I have created. Now it's time to attach the two portions together. Once again, I am using my hot glue gun on the low temperature so that I don't melt anything. I add a generous amount on the pumpkin portion, and then I place that into the center of our little puddle here, and making sure I have the position that I like it. Now, to really make that ice cream puddle look like it's melted, I am softening up those edges with my wood burning tool again, and just making them more curved so it looks more cohesive all together. Now, after everything is attached, it should look like this, and I wanted to soften all of the edges that each portion is connected to, and to do so I'm using Dollar Tree caulk. Now there's so many different ways you can do this also, but this is what I just had on hand, and I am placing it right into those crevices, and I'm using a popsicle stick to smooth it out. I do give it a generous amount on there, and I try to make it as smooth as possible to really hide those blemishes and also hide all of the holes that the styrofoams have, and I really take my time with this. After I had the bottom layer done, I then started moving up the ice cream cone, and as you see here, I'm just trying to hide those seams that each piece is connected to. Once again, I am using a popsicle stick, and I'm making sure to push it into the crevices and then also trying to smooth it out so it looks like all one piece. It does take some time, but it is well worth it because it makes it easier to paint later on. Lastly, I then took more of that caulk and added it right to the pumpkin portion, and just used my finger to smooth it over, because even with those styrofoam pumpkins there is a lot of holes, and this just really helps to fill it in so that later when we do paint it, it is a nice smooth surface. I did let that dry for a couple of hours before we start adding the details. Now for the ice cream cone portion, I wanted it to look like a waffle cone, but I also wanted it to look like a spider web. And I'm just taking my really thin hot glue gun here from Sure Bonder, and I'm adding those lines like a waffle cone would look like, but instead of adding squares, I'm adding these little U's so it looks more like a spider web. I am having my hot glue gun on the low temperature once again, taking my time to make sure that I get an even layer, and I'm just going completely around the ice cream cone. Now it is time to paint everything. I am going to paint my ice cream cone the same color that I did in the painting, which happens to be this bright purple. Now this does take a couple of coats to really get good coverage, but it doesn't take long at all. Once I have one portion of the ice cream done, I then move down to the next portion, and I'm just adding another layer of that acrylic paint. I try to get into all of the crevices that I possibly can, because even though I tried really hard to make everything smooth, you just can't make it completely perfect. So I am pushing that paint all the way into all of the crevices. Once I was done with the ice cream portion, I then started painting the cone, and once again I am going from light to dark. So I'm adding the tan color that we used earlier, and I'm placing that on top, and then I will go over it a couple more times with the other darker browns. Once that was completely dry, I wanted to draw in the face that we created on my painting, and I'm using my Posca paint marker. I'm trying to see where I want the face to really look, and once I have my placement, I'm going in with that dark purple Posca paint marker, and I'm drawing on the eyebrows of our little scary skull ice cream dude here. Then I take my black Posca paint markers and I draw in the eyes, because I did paint the eyes black in the original painting, and then I also am going to paint on the nose. Then I fill it in. Once I was done with that, I took a paintbrush and black acrylic paint, and I started filling in the eyeballs and also the nose again, just to make sure that everything was well incorporated and nice and opaque. Once I was done with the face, I noticed that I wanted to add one more layer of detail, and that is this chocolate dripping. And I know it wasn't in the original painting, but I thought it would be really a nice added detail, so I'm just adding that right on top. But once that was dry, that completes this DIY. Here is how our ice cream cone skull melted thing turned out. I absolutely love it. I want to make a few more in the future, but I realized that my ice cream cone portion may be a little bit off, so I might have to change that up a little bit. Nonetheless, I absolutely loved how this turned out. Once again, I want to know what you think about this DIY down in the comment section below. All right, friends, that completes today's round of DIYs. I had an absolutely blast making each and every one of these. It really put me back in the mood to create more DIYs, and I'm so excited to get back on schedule and just create more. Now, if you are new here and you haven't yet subscribed, I hope you do that today. All you have to do is click on that big red subscribe button down below. It is totally free. Don't forget to click on the bell notification so that YouTube can always notify you every time I upload a new video. Plus, we would love to have you here, part of our virtual art family, where we do a lot of DIYs with an artistic twist. If you're already a subscriber, thank you so much for being here and clicking on today's video. Don't forget to do all of the YouTubey things down below, which is like, comment, and share it to at least one friend. It really does help out my channel. Remember, friends, I do have other socials. I have a Facebook, Instagram, and also a Patreon page. If you would like to be a member, all of the links will be down in the description box below. Don't forget to leave me a comment to let me know which DIY was your favorite. I really hope you enjoyed today's video, and as always, I will see you in the next one.